Daddy. The word escaped Catherine's lips as Daniel walked through the door, but she wasn't talking to him. She was staring at the genetic test results in her shaking hands, results that showed Daniel wasn't just her husband. He was her half-brother. Their baby wasn't just their first child. It was the product of 3 years of unknowing incest. And the man who made it all possible had been dead for 37 years. If you are enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like the video and comment where you are watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories. And trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now, let's go back 2 hours before, where it all started. The Bentley's engine purred to silence in the circular driveway of the Malibu estate. Daniel Morrison stepped out, his 6'2" frame casting long shadows across the Spanish tile. At 38, he carried himself with the precision of a man who owned 17 companies and employed 12,000 people. His Navy suit, tailored to perfection, showed no wrinkles despite the 14-hour flight from Tokyo. The October sun blazed overhead, painting the Pacific coastline in shades of gold and turquoise. Palm trees swayed in the offshore breeze, their fronds rustling like whispered secrets. Daniel's steel-gray eyes scanned the property he'd purchased for $8.5 million 3 years ago. Every detail spoke of control, order, success. His phone buzzed. Another acquisition opportunity in Prague. His fingers moved across the screen with practiced efficiency. Morrison speaking. Sir, the Henderson deal needs your signature by tomorrow morning. Should I send the documents to your home office? Send them to my assistant. I'm taking the afternoon off. The words felt foreign in his mouth. When was the last time he'd taken an afternoon off? When was the last time he'd surprised Catherine? Daniel climbed the stone steps to the massive oak doors. Hand-carved details told stories of Spanish conquistadors and California missions. He'd chosen this house because Catherine loved history, loved stories of people who'd taken impossible journeys for love. The foyer stretched before him like a cathedral. Cream marble floors reflected light from the crystal chandelier suspended 20 feet above. Fresh white orchids filled ceramic vases positioned throughout the space. Catherine insisted on fresh flowers every Tuesday. The housekeeper, Rosa, followed orders with military precision. Catherine. His voice echoed through the empty rooms. Silence. Daniel's footsteps echoed as he moved through the house. The kitchen gleamed with stainless steel appliances and quartz countertops. A half-eaten sandwich sat on the center island. Catherine never left food out. She was obsessive about cleanliness, about order. It was one of the things that had attracted him to her in the first place. He found her in the nursery. She sat in the white rocking chair they'd purchased last month, her hands folded over her rounded belly. 5 months pregnant with their first child. Her auburn hair fell in waves around her shoulders, catching the afternoon light streaming through the windows. She wore a flowing emerald dress that made her green eyes look like precious stones. But her eyes were red, swollen. She'd been crying. Catherine looked up when he entered, quickly wiping her face with the back of her hand. Her smile appeared like a mask sliding into place. Daniel, you're home early. Her voice carried a slight tremor she couldn't quite hide. I finished the Tokyo meetings ahead of schedule. He moved closer, studying her face. What's wrong? Nothing. Just pregnancy hormones. You know how emotional I get. She stood, smoothing down her dress. Are you hungry? I can ask Rosa to prepare something. Daniel caught her hand as she tried to move past him. Her skin felt cold despite the warm afternoon. Catherine. She wouldn't meet his eyes. In 2 years of marriage, she'd never avoided his gaze. Even during their worst arguments, she'd stared him down with fierce determination. Talk to me. I'm fine, really. Just tired. She pulled her hand free. The baby's been active today, keeping me awake. Daniel watched her retreat toward the door. Every instinct he'd developed in 20 years of business told him she was lying. But this wasn't a boardroom negotiation. This was his wife, the mother of his unborn child. I'm going to shower and change, she said without looking back. Then maybe we can have dinner on the terrace? It's such a beautiful evening. The nursery fell silent after she left. Daniel stood surrounded by pale yellow walls and white furniture. Gender-neutral colors because they'd decided to wait, to be surprised. The crib stood empty, waiting. A mobile of silver stars hung motionless above it. On the dresser, he noticed an appointment card from Dr. Rebecca Martinez, Catherine's obstetrician. Today's date. An appointment he didn't remember her mentioning. Daniel's phone rang. His assistant's number. "Sir, I have the Prague contracts ready. Also, Mrs. Morrison's doctor called earlier. Something about test results being ready for pickup." His blood chilled. Test results. What kind of test results? The caller didn't specify. Just said Mrs. Morrison could collect them any time before 5 o'clock. Daniel ended the call. Through the nursery window, he could see Catherine on the terrace below. She stood at the railing, looking out at the ocean. Her shoulders shook. She was crying again. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Daniel left the nursery and headed for his study. The room smelled of leather and cedar, filled with awards and photographs documenting his rise from foster child to billionaire. His desk held 3 computer monitors, each displaying stock prices and international markets in real time. But for the first time in years, he didn't look at the numbers. Instead, he stared at a framed photograph of their wedding day. Catherine in white silk, laughing at something he'd whispered in her ear. They'd looked so happy, so certain of their future together. What if that future was crumbling? Daniel opened his laptop and typed Dr. Martinez's name into the search bar. Obstetrics and gynecology. Specializing in high-risk pregnancies. High risk. The words hit him like ice water. Catherine had never mentioned any risks. She'd told him everything was perfect, that their baby was healthy and developing normally. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Mr. Morrison. This is Dr. Martinez's office. Your wife missed her follow-up appointment today to discuss her test results. Please have her contact us immediately." Daniel stared at the screen. Catherine had been to the doctor today. She'd gotten test results. And she hadn't told him any of it. Outside, the sun was setting over the Pacific. The sky bled orange and purple, casting long shadows across the estate. Beautiful and ominous at the same time. Daniel walked to his office window and looked down at the terrace. Catherine still stood at the railing, her hands pressed against her belly. Even from this distance, he could see her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Something was terribly wrong with their baby. Or worse, something was terribly wrong with Catherine. Daniel found Catherine exactly where he'd left her. She stood frozen at the terrace railing, her emerald dress rippling in the evening breeze. The Pacific stretched endlessly before them, waves crashing against the rocks below with rhythmic violence. Catherine. She didn't turn around. Her knuckles were white where she gripped the iron railing. "I called Dr. Martinez's office." Her entire body went rigid. The ocean breeze carried the scent of salt and jasmine from the garden below, but Daniel could only smell fear. It radiated from his wife like heat from asphalt. "You had no right." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I had every right. You're carrying my child." Now she turned. Her face was streaked with tears, but her green eyes blazed with something Daniel had never seen before. Panic. Raw, desperate panic. "Our child," she corrected. "And I can handle my own medical appointments." "Then why didn't you go to your follow-up? Why are you out here crying instead of celebrating another healthy checkup?" Catherine's mouth opened, then closed. She looked like a trapped animal searching for escape routes. She pressed her hands against her belly, protective and desperate. "The appointment was routine. Everything's fine. Stop lying to me." The words came out harsher than Daniel intended. Catherine flinched as if he'd struck her. "I'm not lying. You missed the appointment. The doctor's office is worried enough to text me directly. And you've been crying for hours." Daniel stepped closer. "What aren't you telling me?" "Nothing. I told you it's just hormones." "Catherine." Daniel's voice dropped to the tone he used in boardroom negotiations when someone was trying to deceive him. "I've built my entire career on reading people. on knowing when someone is lying to me. And right now you're lying. She turned back to the ocean, but not before he saw fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. Please don't do this, she whispered. Do what? Ask my wife to tell me the truth. Please don't make me. Make you what? Catherine's shoulders shook with silent sobs. When she spoke again, her voice was broken. Make me destroy everything. Daniel felt the ground shift beneath his feet. Destroy everything. What could be so terrible that talking about it would destroy everything? Is something wrong with the baby? Catherine's sob echoed across the terrace. She doubled over, clutching her stomach as if protecting their child from his words. Catherine, answer me. Is our baby sick? No. The word came out strangled. No, the baby is fine. Perfect. Healthy. Relief flooded through Daniel, immediately followed by confusion. Then what? Catherine straightened slowly. When she looked at him, her face was devastated. The baby is healthy. But what? But the bloodwork showed something else. Daniel's world tilted. Bloodwork. Medical tests revealed more than just information about babies. They revealed information about parents. What kind of something else? Catherine backed away from him, pressing herself against the railing as if she could disappear into the ocean behind her. I can't tell you. You can and you will. Daniel's voice carried the authority that had built his empire. Whatever it is, we'll handle it. If you're sick, we'll find the best doctors. If there's a problem, we'll solve it. You can't solve this with money. Catherine's laugh was bitter, broken. You can't buy your way out of this one, Daniel. Try me. She stared at him for a long moment. The setting sun painted her face in shades of gold and shadow. Beautiful and tragic. The blood work. She took a shuddering breath. The blood work revealed my blood type. Daniel waited. Blood types weren't shocking. They weren't marriage-ending revelations. And genetic markers. Family markers. Something cold crawled up Daniel's spine. Catherine, what are you trying to tell me? She pulled an envelope from her dress pocket. The same envelope he'd glimpsed through the nursery window. Her hands shook as she held it. The genetic testing showed markers that... She couldn't finish. Daniel took the envelope from her trembling fingers. His name was written across the front in Catherine's careful handwriting. Inside, official letterhead from GeneTech Laboratories. He read the first line. Then the second. Then he read them again because his brain refused to process the words. This can't be right. It is. Catherine, this says. Daniel's voice failed him. I know what it says. It says you're related to me. Catherine nodded, tears streaming down her face. It says you're my half-sister. The words hung in the air between them like a death sentence. Daniel read the report again, searching for errors, for misunderstandings, for any explanation that would make this nightmare disappear. Genetic markers confirmed a 50% DNA match. Shared paternal lineage. Half-siblings. This is impossible. Daniel's hand shook. We can't be related. I would have known. We would have known. How? Catherine's voice was hollow. You were in foster care from age 6. I was adopted at birth. We never knew our real father's name. Daniel's legs gave out. He sank into one of the terrace chairs, the lab report fluttering to the ground. The baby. He whispered. The baby is fine, Catherine said quickly. I asked Dr. Martinez. With half-siblings, the genetic risks are minimal. Our child will be healthy. Our child? Daniel's voice cracked. Catherine, if this is true, then our child is. I know what our child is. They sat in silence as the sun disappeared behind the horizon. The automatic terrace lights flickered on, casting everything in harsh white light. How long have you known? Daniel finally asked. Since this morning. The results came in yesterday, but I couldn't open them until today. Why didn't you tell me immediately? Catherine laughed, but there was no humor in it. Tell you what, Daniel? That I've been unknowingly sleeping with my half-brother for 3 years? That our marriage is. She couldn't say the word. Neither could he. There has to be a mistake, Daniel said. Lab errors happen. We'll get a second opinion. A third opinion. I already thought of that. Catherine picked up the report from where it had fallen. I called the lab. I asked them to rerun everything. They confirmed it twice. Daniel stood and walked to the railing. Below, the Pacific waves crashed against the rocks with relentless fury. He gripped the iron so hard his knuckles went white. Who was he? His voice was barely audible. Our father. The report doesn't say. Just that we share the same paternal DNA markers. So somewhere out there is a man who fathered children with 2 different women and abandoned them both. It would seem so. Daniel turned back to his wife. His half-sister. The mother of his child. Catherine, what do we do? She was crying again, but quietly now. Tears slipped down her cheeks like rain on windows. I don't know. Do we tell people? Tell them what? That our entire marriage is based on a lie we didn't know we were telling. Daniel ran his hands through his hair. In 20 years of business, he'd faced hostile takeovers, corporate espionage, and billion-dollar lawsuits. But this was beyond anything he'd ever imagined. The baby, he said suddenly. What about the baby? What about the baby? I mean, what do we tell our child? Catherine placed both hands on her belly. We tell our child that they are loved, that they are wanted, that they are the most precious thing in our world. And when they ask about their parents? Catherine's face crumpled. I don't know, Daniel. I don't know anything anymore. The terrace fell silent except for the sound of crashing waves. Daniel stared at his wife, this woman he'd loved for 3 years, and felt like he was looking at a stranger. But not a stranger. Something worse than a stranger. Family. Daniel stood in his study at 5 a.m., still wearing yesterday's wrinkled suit. He hadn't slept. Coffee cups littered his desk alongside legal documents he'd pulled from his personal files. Adoption records. Foster care files. Anything that might prove the lab results wrong. His laptop displayed 17 different genealogy websites. DNA testing companies. Private investigation firms. If money could solve this nightmare, he would throw every dollar he had at it. The house around him felt different now. Poisoned. Every room held memories that now carried a sick undertone. Their first kiss in the foyer. Their wedding night in the master bedroom. Catherine announcing her pregnancy right here in this study. All of it contaminated by blood they shared. Daniel's phone rang. His attorney. Harrison Wells. Daniel, I got your message. What's this about genetic testing and marriage validity? Hypothetically, Harrison. If 2 people married without knowing they were related, what are the legal implications? How related are we talking? Half-siblings. Silence stretched across the phone line. Daniel, please tell me this is about a client and not about you. Just answer the question. In California, marriage between half-siblings is prohibited. The marriage would be considered void from the beginning, never legally valid. Daniel closed his eyes. And any children from such a union? Still legitimate. The children aren't at fault for their parents' circumstances. What about criminal implications? If the parties didn't know of their relationship, there's no criminal intent. But Daniel, if this is about you and Catherine. Daniel ended the call. He pulled up another browser window and searched for genetic testing errors. False positives. Laboratory mistakes. Statistical probabilities of wrong results. The numbers stared back at him. Less than 0.1% chance of error when testing showed 50% DNA match. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Catherine appeared in the doorway, wearing the same emerald dress from yesterday. Her hair hung loose around her shoulders, tangled from a sleepless night. Any luck? She asked. I've contacted 3 different labs about retesting. Harrison says the marriage would be considered void if the results are accurate. Catherine nodded as if she'd expected this. I called Dr. Martinez last night. Asked about terminating the pregnancy. Daniel's head snapped up. What? She refused. Said the baby is healthy and there's no medical justification. Catherine, you can't seriously be considering. Considering what, Daniel? Raising a child born from an incestuous relationship? Explaining to our son or daughter why mommy and daddy share the same father. We didn't know. That doesn't change what we are. Daniel stood and walked to the window. Outside, the gardener was trimming the rose bushes. Normal life continuing while their world crumbled. The lab results could be wrong. They're not wrong. You don't know that for certain. Catherine entered the study and sat in the leather chair across from his desk. Daniel, look at me. He turned reluctantly. Really, look at me. Daniel studied his wife's face. Green eyes. High cheekbones. The slight cleft in her chin he'd always found charming. What am I supposed to see? Your eyes. We have the same eyes. Lots of people have green eyes. Your hands. Look at your hands. Daniel glanced down at his own hands. Then at hers. Long fingers. The same slight curve to the pinky finger. The same small scar on the left thumb from childhood accidents they'd never discussed in detail. That doesn't prove anything. The way you sleep. You curl up on your left side with your hand under the pillow. I do the same thing. Coincidence. The way we both hate the smell of cinnamon. The way we both compulsively organize books by color instead of author. The way we both get migraines in the same spot above our left temple. Daniel's stomach clenched. He'd noticed these similarities over the years but attributed them to compatibility. Shared preferences that drew them together. Catherine, stop. We both bite our lower lip when we're thinking. We both tap our index finger when we're nervous. We both. Stop. She fell silent, but her message was clear. The genetic test hadn't revealed their connection. It had simply confirmed what had been there all along. Daniel's phone buzzed. A text from his assistant. Sir, I have the information you requested. The adoption agency that placed Catherine Morrison has agreed to a meeting this afternoon. Daniel showed Catherine the message. Her face went pale. I'm not ready for this. We need answers. Do we? Will knowing make any of this better? It might prove the lab results are wrong. Catherine stood and walked to the bookshelf. Her fingers traced the spines of leather-bound volumes they'd collected together. First editions. Rare prints. Symbols of their shared life. And if the results are right? Daniel didn't answer because he didn't have an answer. I've been thinking, Catherine continued. Maybe we should separate. Take some time apart to figure this out. Absolutely not. Daniel, we can't just pretend this didn't happen. We can until we know for certain. And then what? If the test is accurate, what's your plan? We just continue being married siblings? Raise our child and hope no one ever finds out. If necessary, yes. Catherine spun around to face him. Are you insane? I'm practical. We love each other. That hasn't changed. Everything has changed. Has it? Do you love me less today than you did yesterday? Catherine's eyes filled with tears. That's not the point. It's exactly the point. Nothing about who we are as people has changed. We're the same two people who fell in love 3 years ago. We're siblings, Daniel. We're two people who found each other in a world that tried to keep us apart. Our father, whoever he was, abandoned us both. We grew up alone, searching for family, for connection. And we found it in each other. That's a beautiful way to rationalize incest. The word hit Daniel like a physical blow. Incest. The clinical term for what their relationship had become. Don't call it that. What would you prefer I call it? Love. I'd prefer you call it love. Catherine walked to the window and stared out at the Pacific. I called my adoptive parents last night. Daniel's blood chilled. What did you tell them? I asked about my birth father. They said the adoption was closed. They never knew his name. Did you tell them about us? Of course not. But I could see the concern in my mother's voice. She knows something's wrong. Catherine, you can't tell anyone about this. Not until we know for certain. I'm not stupid, Daniel. I understand the implications. Daniel joined her at the window. Outside, the Pacific stretched endlessly toward the horizon. Yesterday, that view had represented infinite possibility. Today, it looked like an abyss. What if we moved? He asked suddenly. Moved where? Somewhere no one knows us. Another country. We could start over with new identities. Catherine stared at him. You want to go into hiding? I want to protect our family. Our family is built on a lie. Our family is built on love. Catherine turned away from the window. I need some air. I'm going for a drive. Where? I don't know. Somewhere I can think without feeling like I'm suffocating. She headed for the door, then stopped. Daniel, what if the people at the adoption agency confirm our worst fears? What if they tell us our father was some predator who targeted vulnerable women? What if we're the products of something horrible? Then we deal with it together. Together. Catherine laughed bitterly. What a concept. She left him standing in the study, surrounded by evidence of their shared life. Their wedding photos smiled down at him from the shelves. Two people who'd thought they were creating a love story but had actually been living a genetic nightmare. Daniel's phone rang again. Harrison Wells. Daniel, I've been thinking about our conversation. There might be options. Legal precedents for marriages contracted in good faith before discovery of consanguinity. If you want to explore. Not yet. Daniel, if this is really about you and Catherine, you need professional help. Therapists who specialize in this kind of trauma. There are therapists who specialize in accidental incest. There are therapists who specialize in genetic sexual attraction. It's more common than you'd think. Siblings separated at birth who meet as adults and experience romantic feelings before discovering their relationship. Is that what this is? I don't know. But there are people who can help you figure it out. Daniel ended the call and sat down heavily in his chair. Outside, he could hear Catherine's car starting. The Porsche's engine roared to life, then faded as she drove away. He was alone with the truth that was tearing them apart. Daniel's phone exploded with sound as he sat across from Margaret Holloway at the Sunrise Adoption Agency. The older woman had been explaining their confidentiality policies when his emergency ringtone cut through the sterile office air. Mr. Morrison. This is Dr. Martinez. Your wife is in our emergency department. You need to come immediately. The world tilted. What happened? She collapsed in our parking lot. We're running tests now, but the baby's heartbeat is irregular. How quickly can you get here? Daniel was already standing, grabbing his jacket. 20 minutes. Margaret Holloway watched with concern as he headed for the door. Mr. Morrison, we haven't finished. Schedule another meeting. He paused at the doorway. And Mrs. Holloway? Find everything you can about Catherine's birth father. Everything. The drive to Cedars-Sinai blurred past in a haze of afternoon traffic and raw panic. Daniel's hands gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. Catherine. The baby. Both of them at risk while he'd been chasing answers that might destroy their lives even further. He found Dr. Martinez in the maternity ward waiting area. The middle-aged physician wore scrubs covered in small teddy bears, but her expression was grave. How is she? Stable now. The collapse was caused by severe dehydration and elevated stress hormones. Mr. Morrison. Has your wife been under unusual stress lately? Daniel's throat closed. You could say that. The baby's heartbeat normalized once we got her hydrated, but I'm concerned about her emotional state. She's been crying since she arrived, and she keeps asking if the baby is going to be okay. Can I see her? Room 314. But Mr. Morrison. Dr. Martinez touched his arm. Whatever's causing this level of stress in your wife needs to be addressed. This kind of emotional trauma can affect fetal development. Daniel nodded and headed for the elevator. His reflection in the polished steel doors showed a man who'd aged years in 2 days. His normally perfect appearance was disheveled, his eyes haunted. Room 314 smelled of antiseptic and fear. Catherine lay propped against white pillows, and 4 lines snaking from her left arm. Her face was pale except for red-rimmed eyes that had clearly shed too many tears. She looked up when he entered, and for a moment, her relief was obvious. Then reality crashed back, and her expression shuddered. "You came." "Of course I came." Daniel approached her bed cautiously. "How are you feeling?" "Like someone who just realized her entire life is a lie." Daniel pulled a chair close to her bedside. The monitor attached to her belly showed their baby's heartbeat in steady green lines across a black screen. Strong. Regular. Defiant. "Dr. Martinez said you collapsed in the parking lot." "I was coming to see her. To ask about." Catherine's voice broke. "To ask about options." "Catherine. I can't stop thinking about it, Daniel. About what we've done. What we've been doing for 3 years. We didn't know. That doesn't change the biology." A knock interrupted them. A nurse entered carrying a food tray and more 4 bags. "Mrs. Morrison, you need to eat something. And Mr. Morrison, Dr. Martinez wants to see you both together in 15 minutes. After the nurse left, Daniel reached for Catherine's hand. She didn't pull away, but her fingers remained limp in his grasp. "I went to the adoption agency," he said. Catherine's eyes sharpened. "And Mrs. Holloway was about to explain their policies when you—" He gestured at the hospital room. "She's researching Catherine's file, looking for information about your birth father." "Our birth father." The words hung between them like a curse. "Catherine, we need to talk about what happens next." "What do you mean?" "I mean, regardless of what we discover about our genetics, we're having a child together. That baby." Daniel looked at the monitor showing their child's heartbeat. "That baby is innocent in all of this." Catherine followed his gaze to the monitor. "I know. So what do we do? Do we stay married and pretend we don't know the truth? Do we divorce and create some custody arrangement? Do we tell our child that mommy and daddy are siblings?" "I don't know, Daniel. I honestly don't know." Dr. Martinez entered with a tablet and 2 additional chairs. She positioned herself across from both of them with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd delivered difficult news many times. "I need to ask some questions, and I need honest answers. Has either of you experienced unusual stress or trauma in the past few days?" Daniel and Catherine exchanged glances. "Yes," Catherine said simply. "Can you tell me the nature of the stress?" Another loaded glance. "How did you explain accidental incest to your obstetrician?" "Family issues," Daniel said finally. "Mr. Morrison, family issues don't typically cause a healthy pregnant woman to collapse from stress-induced dehydration. I need more information to properly care for your wife and baby." Catherine spoke up. "Doctor, if you discovered something about your family that fundamentally changed how you saw yourself, how would you handle it?" Dr. Martinez leaned forward. "Are we talking about genetic issues? Family medical history? Something like that?" "Catherine," Dr. Martinez said gently, "whatever you've discovered, there are resources available. Genetic counselors. Therapists who specialize in family trauma. You don't have to navigate this alone. What if the thing you discovered made your marriage legally invalid?" Catherine asked. Dr. Martinez's eyebrows rose. "That's a very specific concern." Hypothetically, if a marriage were declared invalid, it wouldn't change the legitimacy of children born during that marriage. And it wouldn't change the fact that those children need parents who are emotionally healthy enough to care for them. The room fell silent except for the steady beeping of monitors. "There's something else," Dr. Martinez continued. "The blood work we ran today showed elevated cortisol levels consistent with severe psychological trauma. Mrs. Morrison, if this stress continues, it could affect your pregnancy." "What kind of effects?" Daniel asked. Premature labor. Low birth weight. Developmental delays. Stress hormones cross the placental barrier. Catherine's hand moved protectively to her belly. What do I need to do? You need to find a way to manage whatever crisis you're facing, whether that means counseling, medication, or lifestyle changes. We can't take medication, Catherine said quickly. Not while I'm pregnant. There are pregnancy-safe options for anxiety and depression, but the best treatment is addressing the source of the stress. Dr. Martinez stood and handed Daniel a business card. This is Dr. Sarah Kim. She's a therapist who specializes in family crisis intervention. I strongly recommend you call her. After the doctor left, Daniel and Catherine sat in uncomfortable silence. The business card felt heavy in Daniel's hand. A therapist, Catherine said finally. Someone to help us figure this out. Someone else who would know our secret. Someone bound by doctor-patient confidentiality. Catherine shifted in the hospital bed, wincing as the four tugged at her arm. Daniel, what if we can't figure this out? What if there's no good answer? Then we find a way to live with the bad answers. How? Before Daniel could respond, his phone rang. Margaret Holloway from the adoption agency. Mr. Morrison, I've found some information about Catherine's birth father. Can you come back to the office? Daniel looked at Catherine. We'll be there tomorrow. Mr. Morrison, I think you should come today. What I've found. It changes things. Daniel's stomach dropped. Changes things how? I'd rather discuss this in person. Both of you, if possible. My wife is in the hospital. Is she able to travel? Daniel looked at Catherine, who was already reaching for the call button to summon the nurse. What did you find? She asked into the phone. Mrs. Morrison, I found your birth father's file. And there's information that might resolve your concerns about your marriage. Catherine and Daniel stared at each other. What kind of information? Daniel asked. The kind that explains why genetic testing might show a family connection when there isn't one. The room spun. Daniel gripped the phone tighter. Are you saying the lab results were wrong? I'm saying there might be an explanation that has nothing to do with shared biology. Can you come in today? Catherine was already pulling the four from her arm despite the nurse's protests. We'll be there in an hour. As they prepared to leave the hospital, Daniel felt something he hadn't experienced in 2 days. Hope. Maybe their nightmare was about to end. Maybe their marriage could be saved. Margaret Holloway's office felt different when Daniel and Catherine returned. The afternoon light streaming through the windows seemed sharper, more urgent. Catherine sat gingerly in the visitor's chair, still pale from her hospital ordeal, while Daniel positioned himself protectively beside her. Margaret spread 3 manila folders across her desk like playing cards that would determine their fate. Before I explain what I found, I need you both to understand something, Margaret began. What I'm about to tell you violates several agency policies. But given the circumstances you've described, I believe you have a right to know. Daniel's jaw tightened. What did you find? Margaret opened the first folder. Catherine, this is your original birth file. Your birth mother was 16-year-old Rebecca Walsh from San Diego. She gave birth at St. Mary's Hospital on March 15, 1986. Catherine nodded. She'd known her birth mother's name since she was 18. The father listed on your birth certificate is Marcus Walsh. Catherine's head snapped up. Walsh. The same last name as my birth mother. Rebecca's older brother. The words hit the room like a physical blow. Catherine's face went white. My birth father was my birth mother's brother? According to the documentation, yes. Rebecca Walsh was impregnated by her brother Marcus when she was 15. The family covered it up by sending Rebecca to a distant relative in Los Angeles for the pregnancy. Daniel felt sick. So Catherine is the product of incest. That's what the birth certificate indicates, Margaret confirmed. But here's where it gets complicated. She opened the second folder. I did some research into the Walsh family after finding this information. Marcus Walsh died in a car accident in 1987, 1 year after Catherine's birth. But before he died, he had another relationship that produced a child. Margaret pulled out a hospital record from San Francisco General. Marcus Walsh is also listed as the father of a boy born to Jennifer Morrison on August 12, 1986. 5 months after Catherine's birth. Daniel's world tilted. Jennifer Morrison was my birth mother's name. According to these records, yes. Which would make you and Catherine half-siblings through Marcus Walsh. Catherine started crying again, but these weren't tears of devastation. They were tears of confusion. I don't understand. If this is true, then the genetic test was right. We are related. Margaret held up her hand. Not necessarily. Because I found something else. She opened the third folder with careful precision. I contacted St. Mary's Hospital in San Diego and San Francisco General about their records from 1986. Both hospitals were involved in a massive filing scandal that year. A clerk named Tommy Rodriguez was falsifying birth certificates and selling them to adoption agencies. Daniel leaned forward. What kind of falsification? Rodriguez was inventing father information for young mothers who wouldn't reveal the real father's identity. He had a list of fake names he rotated through. Marcus Walsh was one of them. Catherine stopped crying. You're saying Marcus Walsh might not be either of our fathers? I'm saying the documentation indicating Marcus Walsh as your father is highly suspect. The timing, the circumstances, the fact that both your birth certificates show the same father but from different hospitals involved in the same fraud case. Margaret pulled out a newspaper clipping from 1987. Tommy Rodriguez was arrested for falsifying over 300 birth certificates. The scandal destroyed the credibility of adoptions processed through his system. Daniel stared at the newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Hospital Clerk Charged in Adoption Fraud Ring." So the genetic test showing we're related could be completely unrelated to your supposed shared father, Margaret finished. Genetic testing shows patterns, but it can't always distinguish between different types of family connections. Catherine's voice was barely a whisper. What other types of connections? Margaret hesitated. There are rare cases where unrelated individuals can show genetic similarities due to geographic ancestry. If your real fathers were from the same ethnic background and geographic region, you might share enough genetic markers to register as family. How rare? Daniel asked. Rare enough that most labs wouldn't consider it. But not impossible. Catherine stood and walked to the window, her hand pressed against her belly. So we might not be related at all. Or you might be distantly related through common ancestry rather than recent family connection, Margaret clarified. The only way to know for certain would be advanced genetic testing that examines specific family markers rather than general DNA similarity. Daniel felt hope and terror warring in his chest. How long would that take? 2 to 3 weeks. And it's expensive. About $15,000. Money isn't an issue, Daniel said immediately. Where do we go? Margaret handed him another business card. Dr. Patricia Chen at UCLA runs the most advanced genetic genealogy lab on the West Coast. If anyone can give you definitive answers, it's her. Catherine turned from the window. What if the advanced testing confirms we're siblings? Then you'll have to decide how to move forward with that information. And if it shows we're not related, then you'll know your marriage is valid and your child has nothing to worry about. The room fell silent except for the sound of traffic outside and Catherine's quiet breathing. There's one more thing, Margaret said softly. I managed to track down some information about your real birth fathers. Daniel and Catherine both tensed. Catherine, your birth mother Rebecca Walsh eventually revealed the true father's identity to a social worker in 1995. His name was David Chen, a 20-year-old college student from UCLA. She'd met him at a party and never told him about the pregnancy. Catherine sat down heavily. David Chen. He became a successful architect. Married. Had 3 other children. He lives in Portland now. Margaret turned to Daniel. Your birth mother Jennifer also eventually revealed your father's identity. Robert Stevens, a 23-year-old musician from San Francisco. Also never told about the pregnancy. Robert Stevens, Daniel repeated. He died in 2010, but he had 2 daughters who are still alive. You're half-sisters. Daniel felt the ground shifting beneath everything he thought he knew about himself. So if these are our real fathers, then the genetic test would be showing a false positive, Margaret confirmed. David Chen and Robert Stevens were not related as far as I can determine. Catherine looked at Daniel, and for the first time in 2 days, her eyes held something other than despair. We might not be siblings. We might not be. Our baby might be completely normal and healthy. Margaret gathered the folders. I've arranged for you to see Dr. Chen tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. She'll need blood samples from both of you for the advanced testing. As they prepared to leave, Catherine stopped at the door. Mrs. Holloway, why did you help us? This went far beyond what you had to do. Margaret smiled sadly. Because 20 years ago I was adopted too. And I spent my entire adult life wondering about my real family. Everyone deserves to know the truth about where they come from. Outside the adoption agency, Daniel and Catherine stood on the sidewalk as the sun set over Los Angeles. The city sprawled before them, millions of lights beginning to twinkle in the gathering dusk. 3 weeks, Catherine said. 3 weeks until we know for certain. What do we do until then? Daniel took her hand. For the first time since the nightmare began, she didn't pull away. We take care of each other. We take care of our baby. And we hope. Catherine squeezed his fingers. Daniel, what if we're not related? What if this whole thing was just a horrible mistake? Then we'll have learned something important about how much we're willing to fight for our family. And if we are related? Daniel looked into her green eyes, the eyes he'd thought were identical to his own, and felt something he hadn't experienced in days. Certainty. Then we'll figure it out together. Because whatever we are to each other, we're the parents of that baby. And that makes us family no matter what any test says. Catherine smiled for the first time since finding the envelope. It was small and fragile, but it was real. I love you, she whispered. I love you too. They stood together as the city lit up around them, holding on to hope and each other while they waited for science to determine their fate. 3 weeks felt like forever. But for the first time in days, forever felt like something they might actually have. 3 weeks felt like forever. But for the first time in days, forever felt like something they might actually have. The Halloween decorations Catherine had hung around the estate seemed prophetic now. Ghosts and skeletons dancing in the ocean breeze, celebrating secrets that refused to stay buried. But for the first time in weeks, the decorations felt playful rather than ominous. Daniel found Catherine in the nursery, folding tiny yellow onesies into neat piles. Her belly had grown noticeably in the 2 weeks since their visit to Dr. Patricia Chen at UCLA. The advanced genetic testing required only blood samples, but the waiting felt more invasive than any medical procedure. Dr. Chen called, Daniel said from the doorway. Catherine's hands stilled on a miniature pair of socks. And 1 more week. The lab is running additional confirmation tests to make absolutely certain of the results. Catherine nodded and continued folding. They'd developed an unspoken agreement not to discuss the test results until they had definitive answers. Instead, they'd spent the past 2 weeks rediscovering each other. I have something for you, Daniel said, producing a small wrapped box from behind his back. Catherine's eyes lit up. It's not my birthday. It's not a birthday present. She opened the box carefully. Inside, nestled in white tissue paper, lay a silver bracelet with a small charm shaped like a baby rattle. Daniel, it's beautiful. Look at the inscription. Catherine held the charm up to the afternoon light streaming through the nursery windows. Engraved in tiny script were the words, "For the little one who brought us back together." Tears sprang to Catherine's eyes. How did you? Because it's true. This baby, this pregnancy, it's what made us face the truth about everything. Without this little one, we might have spent our whole lives not knowing who we really are. Catherine fastened the bracelet around her wrist with Daniel's help. His fingers brushed her skin as he worked the tiny clasp, and the familiar electricity passed between them. Over the past 2 weeks, they'd been cautiously rebuilding physical intimacy. Hand-holding, brief kisses, sleeping in the same bed again, though carefully maintaining space. "I've been thinking," Catherine said as they settled into the rocking chairs they'd positioned by the window. "About names." "What kind of names?" "For the baby. I know we said we'd wait until we knew the gender, but I can't help thinking about it." Daniel reached for her hand. "Tell me. If it's a girl, I like Hope." "Hope Morrison." "Hope Morrison Walsh." Daniel's eyebrows rose. "You want to use your birth mother's name?" "Rebecca Walsh was 16 years old and scared out of her mind when she had me. But she carried me for 9 months and gave me life. I think she deserves to be remembered." "Hope Morrison Walsh," Daniel repeated. "I like it." "And if it's a boy?" "What about David? After your real father." Catherine smiled. "David Morrison Stevens. Using your father's name too." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the Pacific Ocean stretch endlessly toward the horizon. The view that had once represented uncertainty now felt like infinite possibility. "Catherine, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "These past 2 weeks, being together like this, getting to know each other again. How does it feel?" Catherine considered the question carefully. "Different. Better. Like we're meeting for the first time, but we already know we're compatible." "That's exactly how I feel. It's like the crisis stripped away all our assumptions about each other and forced us to see who we really are underneath." Daniel squeezed her hand. "And do you like what you see?" "I love what I see." The doorbell interrupted them. Through the nursery window, they could see a silver Mercedes in the driveway. "Are you expecting someone?" Catherine asked. Daniel shook his head. They'd avoided visitors during the waiting period, not ready to explain their temporary separation and reunion to friends or family. Rosa's voice echoed from downstairs. "Mr. Morrison, there's a woman here to see you. She says she's from the genetics lab." Daniel and Catherine exchanged glances. Dr. Chen had promised to call with results, not visit in person. They found a young woman in a navy blazer waiting in the foyer. She carried a leather briefcase and wore the serious expression of someone delivering important news. "Mr. and Mrs. Morrison. I'm Dr. Lisa Park from UCLA Genetics Lab. Dr. Chun sent me to speak with you about your test results." Catherine's hand found Daniel's. "The results aren't ready for another week." "Actually, they are. Dr. Chun wanted me to deliver them personally because of the unusual nature of your case." Daniel's stomach dropped. Personal delivery of genetic test results was never good news. "Would you prefer to sit down?" Dr. Park asked. They led her to the living room overlooking the terrace where this nightmare had begun 2 weeks ago. Dr. Park arranged several documents on the coffee table with clinical precision. "I'll be direct," she began. "The advanced genetic testing shows that you are not siblings." Catherine gasped. Daniel felt his knees go weak with relief. "You're certain?" "Completely certain. The DNA markers that initially suggested family connection are explained by shared geographic ancestry. Your birth father's families both originated from the same region of Ireland approximately 4 generations ago. You're distant cousins at most, which is genetically insignificant." Catherine started crying, but these were tears of joy. Daniel pulled her into his arms, feeling 2 weeks of careful emotional control finally break. "There's more," Dr. Park continued. "We also tested for any genetic risks to your pregnancy based on your actual family histories. Everything looks excellent. Your baby is healthy and developing normally. So our marriage," Daniel began, "is completely valid. There are no legal or medical concerns about your relationship." Catherine laughed through her tears. "We're not siblings." "You're not siblings." Dr. Park gathered her documents. "Dr. Chun wanted me to give you this as well." She handed them a sealed envelope marked, "Personal." "What is it?" "Information about your biological families, if you're interested in making contact." We located living relatives for both of you. After Dr. Park left, Daniel and Catherine sat on the terrace holding the envelope. The sun was setting over the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Do you want to open it? Catherine asked. Do you? I think I do. After everything we've been through, I want to know where we really came from. Daniel opened the envelope carefully. Inside were 2 separate reports. Catherine, your birth father David Chen has 3 daughters. Rebecca, age 28. Jennifer, age 25. And Susan, age 22. They all live in the Portland area. I have sisters, Catherine whispered. Your birth mother Rebecca Walsh is still alive. She's married and living in San Diego. She has 2 sons. Catherine's hand flew to her mouth. My birth mother is alive? Daniel continued reading. For me, my birth father Robert Stevens died in 2010, but he has 2 daughters from his marriage. Michelle, age 35, and Carol, age 32. They both live in San Francisco. You have sisters too. They sat in stunned silence, processing the reality that they both had living family members they'd never known existed. Daniel, what if we contacted them? All of them. Not all at once. But maybe we could start with one person. See if they're interested in meeting us. Daniel looked at his wife, this woman he'd fallen in love with 3 years ago and nearly lost 2 weeks ago, and felt something he'd never experienced before, completeness. I'd like that. I'd like our baby to know their extended family. Catherine leaned against his shoulder as the stars began appearing in the darkening sky. I can't believe it's over. What's over? The nightmare. The uncertainty. The fear that our love was something wrong or impossible. Daniel kissed the top of her head. Our love was never wrong. Even when we thought we were siblings, what we felt for each other was real. But now we know it's also right. Now we know it's also right. They held each other as the estates settled into evening quiet around them. Tomorrow they would start the process of reaching out to their newfound families. Tomorrow they would begin planning for their baby's arrival with certainty instead of fear. The phone call that would destroy their fragile peace came at 6:47 a.m. Daniel was making coffee in the kitchen when Catherine's scream pierced the morning quiet. He found her in the living room, clutching her phone with both hands, her face white as the walls around her. Catherine, what's wrong? She held up the phone with a trembling hand. The caller ID showed, Rebecca Walsh, birth mother. She called me, Catherine whispered. My birth mother called me. Daniel's heart raced. They'd planned to reach out to their biological families slowly, carefully. Neither had expected to be contacted first. What did she say? She knows about us. About our marriage. About the genetic testing. Catherine's voice was hollow. Daniel, she knows everything. How is that possible? Catherine's phone rang again. The same number. Answer it, Daniel said. Put it on speaker. Catherine's hands shook as she accepted the call. Catherine, please don't hang up. I know this is overwhelming, but I need to talk to you. The voice was older than Catherine's but carried the same musical quality. Rebecca Walsh. The 16-year-old girl who'd given birth to Catherine was now a 54-year-old woman. How did you get my number? Catherine asked. Dr. Chen's office contacted me. They said you'd requested information about biological family members. We asked for contact information, not for them to reach out to you directly. Catherine, there's something you need to know. Something that Dr. Chen discovered during your genetic testing that she didn't tell you. Daniel and Catherine exchanged terrified glances. What kind of something? Daniel asked. Who is this? Daniel Morrison. Catherine's husband. A long pause. When Rebecca spoke again, her voice carried a weight that made Daniel's stomach drop. Mr. Morrison, the genetic testing didn't just confirm that you and Catherine aren't siblings. It revealed something else about Catherine's paternity. We know about David Chen, Catherine said quickly. We know he's my real father. Catherine, honey, David Chen isn't your father either. The words hit the room like a physical blow. What are you talking about? Catherine's voice cracked. When I was 16, I told the social workers that David Chen was your father because I was terrified of the truth. But when Dr. Chen ran the advanced genetic testing, she found markers that didn't match David Chen's DNA profile. Then who is my father? Rebecca's silence stretched so long that Catherine thought the call had dropped. Rebecca, who is my father? Marcus Walsh really was your father, Catherine. But not in the way we thought. Daniel felt ice water fill his veins. Marcus Walsh was your brother, Catherine said slowly. The birth certificate said he was your brother. The birth certificate was wrong about our relationship. Marcus Walsh wasn't my brother. Then who was he? He was my adoptive father. The room spun. Catherine gripped the back of the sofa to keep from falling. Your adoptive father? I was adopted by the Walsh family when I was 10 years old. Marcus was 42 when he assaulted me. I was 15. Catherine's phone slipped from her hands and clattered to the floor. Daniel caught her as her legs gave out. Catherine, are you there? Daniel retrieved the phone. Mrs. Walsh, this is Daniel. Catherine is. She's having trouble processing this. I understand. But Mr. Morrison, there's more. More. Marcus Walsh had other victims. The police found evidence after he died. He'd been abusing young girls for years. Daniel closed his eyes. How many other victims? At least 6 that they found. All adoptees or foster children he had access to through his job with Child Protective Services. Catherine looked up from where she sat on the sofa. He worked with Child Protective Services? He was a caseworker, Rebecca confirmed. That's how he gained access to vulnerable children. The implications hit Daniel like a tsunami. Marcus Walsh. Child Protective Services. Foster children. Mrs. Walsh, what years did Marcus work for CPS? From 1978 until his death in 1987. Why? Daniel's hands began shaking. I was in foster care from 1986 to 1992. Silence. Mr. Morrison, what was your caseworker's name? Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. Marcus Walsh. Catherine's head snapped up. No. Catherine, I need to ask you something, Rebecca said gently. Do you know anything about your husband's birth circumstances? He was abandoned at a hospital in San Francisco. His mother was Jennifer Morrison. Mr. Morrison, do you remember anything about your time with Marcus Walsh? Daniel's world was collapsing in real time. Memories he'd buried for 30 years came flooding back. A man with kind eyes who brought him candy. Private meetings in his office. Promises that good boys got special treatment. Oh God, Daniel whispered. Daniel. Catherine reached for him. Catherine, I remember him. I remember Marcus Walsh. Mr. Morrison. Rebecca's voice was very gentle now. I think Marcus Walsh was your father too. That's impossible. The genetic testing showed. The genetic testing showed that you and Catherine share a father. Dr. Chen called me because she found something disturbing in the DNA analysis. Markers that suggest Catherine's father also fathered other children during the same time period. Daniel sat down heavily beside Catherine. You're saying Marcus Walsh raped my birth mother too? I'm saying it's very likely. Jennifer Morrison was 19 and working as a clerk in the CPS office where Marcus worked. She left the job suddenly in 1985 and gave birth to you 9 months later. Catherine was crying again, but these weren't tears of relief. They were tears of horror. So we are siblings, she whispered. Half-siblings, Rebecca confirmed. Both children of a predator who destroyed dozens of lives. The living room fell silent except for the sound of Catherine's quiet sobs. Outside, the November morning was bright and beautiful. Inside, their world had turned to ash. Mrs. Walsh, Daniel said finally. Why are you telling us this now? Why didn't Dr. Chen tell us when she delivered the other results? Because Dr. Chen is bound by patient confidentiality. She couldn't reveal information about a criminal case without permission from the victims. And you gave permission? I gave permission because you have a right to know the truth about your father. And because... Rebecca's voice broke. Because I couldn't let you live a lie. Even if the truth destroys your marriage, you deserve to know what Marcus Walsh really was. Catherine stood abruptly and walked to the terrace doors. Her reflection in the glass looked pale and ghostly. Our baby, she said without turning around. Catherine. Our baby is the product of incest after all. We're siblings and we're having a child together. Half-siblings, Daniel corrected weakly. Does that make it better? Catherine spun to face him. Does that make our child less damaged by what we've unknowingly done? The medical risks are still minimal, Rebecca said from the phone. Dr. Chen confirmed that. I don't care about medical risks, Catherine said. I care about the fact that my child's grandfather was a child molester who raped both of their parents. Daniel tried to reach for her, but Catherine stepped away. Don't touch me. Catherine. I said don't touch me. Her voice carried a hysteria that terrified him. We're siblings, Daniel. Siblings. Everything we've shared, everything we've done together, it's all been incest. We didn't know. That doesn't change what it was. Catherine ran from the room. Daniel heard her footsteps on the stairs, then the slam of their bedroom door. He was alone with the phone and the devastating truth that had just destroyed his marriage for the second time in 3 weeks. Mr. Morrison. Rebecca's voice was barely audible. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what Marcus did to both of you. And I'm sorry that the truth is so horrible. Why? Daniel's voice was broken. Why did you have to tell us? Because lies, even comfortable ones, always come out eventually. And when they do, they cause more damage than the truth ever could. Daniel ended the call and sat alone in the living room as his perfect world crumbled around him for the second time. Upstairs, he could hear Catherine crying. Outside, the Pacific Ocean continued its eternal rhythm, indifferent to the human tragedy playing out in the house overlooking its waves. The woman he loved was his half-sister. Their unborn child was the product of an incestuous relationship. 3 days of silence. Daniel stood outside the master bedroom door with a dinner tray he knew Catherine wouldn't eat. She'd locked herself away since Rebecca's phone call, emerging only when he was out of the house. The housekeeper Rosa reported that Catherine was eating small amounts and keeping up with her prenatal vitamins, but she refused to see Daniel. He'd tried everything. Flowers left outside her door. Handwritten letters slipped under the gap. Voice messages on her phone that went unanswered. Nothing penetrated the wall of horror and shame she'd built around herself. Catherine. He knocked softly. I brought dinner. Rosa made your favorite pasta. Silence. I know you're awake. I can see the light under the door. Still nothing. Daniel set the tray down and pressed his forehead against the cool wood of the door. I've been thinking about what Rebecca told us. About Marcus Walsh. About what he did to both of us. He heard movement inside the room. Catherine was listening. I remember more now. About those private meetings in his office. About the way he made me feel special and then ashamed. I buried those memories for 30 years, but they're all coming back. A soft sound from inside. Was she crying? Catherine, we're both victims of the same monster. That doesn't make what happened between us our fault. The door opened so suddenly that Daniel stumbled backward. Catherine stood in the doorway wearing pajamas that hung loose on her frame. She'd lost weight despite the pregnancy. Her eyes were red and hollow. Doesn't it? She whispered. No, it doesn't. We're siblings, Daniel. Half-siblings. The genetic testing confirmed it. Our child. She pressed her hands to her belly. Our child is the product of incest. Our child is the product of love between two people who didn't know they were related. The outcome is the same. Daniel stepped closer. Catherine didn't retreat, but she didn't welcome him either. Catherine, look at me. She raised her eyes reluctantly. Do you love me? That's not the point. It's the only point that matters. Do you love me? Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. Yes. God help me, yes. Then that's what our child is the product of. Love. Not incest. Not Marcus Walsh's crimes. Love. Catherine shook her head. You don't understand. I can't stop thinking about it. Every time I look at you, I see his face. I see what he did to us. What he made us into. He didn't make us into anything. We chose each other. We chose to build a life together. We chose to create this baby. We chose based on a lie. We chose based on love. Catherine walked to the bedroom window overlooking the Pacific. The November sunset painted the sky in shades of purple and gold. I've been researching, she said without turning around. Children born to half-siblings. The risks, the statistics, the long-term effects. Daniel's stomach clenched. And the medical risks are low. Dr. Martinez was right about that. But the psychological effects. Catherine's voice broke. The shame, the stigma, the knowledge of how they were conceived. It follows them their entire lives. Only if they know. Catherine spun around. You want to lie to our child? I want to protect our child. From the truth. From a truth that will only cause pain. Catherine walked to the dresser where they'd arranged ultrasound photos of their baby. 6 months pregnant now, with a clearly defined little face and tiny hands. I've been talking to the baby, she said softly. Explaining why Mommy and Daddy can't be together anymore. Daniel felt his world tilt. Catherine, no. I've made a decision, Daniel. Don't do this. I'm filing for divorce. The words hit him like physical blows. You can't. I can and I will. I've already spoken to a lawyer. Catherine, please. We can work through this. How? How do we work through the fact that we're siblings? How do we work through the fact that our father was a child molester who destroyed dozens of lives? We work through it together. The same way we worked through everything else. Catherine sat down heavily on the bed. I can't, Daniel. I can't look at you without seeing him. I can't touch you without remembering what we unknowingly did. I can't carry this baby knowing what it represents. It represents love. It represents the ultimate victory of a dead predator. Daniel knelt in front of her, taking her hands despite her resistance. Catherine, listen to me. Marcus Walsh is dead. He's been dead for 37 years. If we let this destroy us, if we let it destroy our family, then he wins. Even from the grave, he wins. Maybe he should win. Maybe this is justice for what we did. We didn't do anything wrong. We committed incest, Daniel. Repeated, ongoing incest for 3 years. We made love. There's a difference. Catherine pulled her hands free. Not in the eyes of the law. Not in the eyes of society. Not in the eyes of our child when they're old enough to understand. Daniel stood and walked to the window. Outside, the estate grounds stretched toward the ocean. This house that had been their sanctuary now felt like a prison. What about the baby? He asked. What about the baby? You're 6 months pregnant, Catherine. Are you planning to raise our child alone? I don't know. Maybe adoption would be better. Daniel's head whipped around. Adoption. There are families who could give this baby a normal life. Parents who aren't siblings. A chance to grow up without the shame of their conception. Absolutely not. It's not your decision to make. Like hell it isn't. That's my child too. Catherine's eyes flashed with anger. Your child. The child you fathered with your half-sister. The child we created together out of love. Stop saying that word. Stop pretending this is about love. What else would you call it? We've been together for 3 years. We've supported each other through everything. We've built a life together. We've created a child together. If that's not love, what is it? Catherine was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. It's the most beautiful mistake 2 people have ever made. Daniel felt tears he'd been holding back for 3 days finally break free. Then why can't we keep making beautiful mistakes together? Because I can't live with the shame, Daniel. Every day, every moment, knowing what we are to each other. Knowing what our child will inherit from us. Our child will inherit love. Devotion. 2 parents who would do anything to protect them. Our child will inherit the legacy of Marcus Walsh. Daniel walked back to where Catherine sat on the bed. He knelt again, looking directly into her eyes. Catherine, I'm going to ask you one more time. Do you love me? Yes. Do you want our baby? Her hands moved protectively to her belly. Yes. Do you believe we can be good parents together? That's not the point. Answer the question. Do you believe we can be good parents together? Catherine's voice cracked. Yes. Then marry me. Catherine stared at him. What? Marry me? Not as siblings. Not as victims of Marcus Walsh. Marry me as the 2 people who found each other against impossible odds and refused to let a dead monster destroy what we've built. We're already married. That marriage was based on incomplete information. I'm asking you to marry me again, with full knowledge of who we are and what we're choosing. Catherine shook her head. Daniel, we can't just decide to ignore biology. We can decide that biology doesn't define us. We can decide that love is stronger than DNA. We can decide that our child deserves parents who choose each other every single day, regardless of what any test says. Catherine stood and walked away from him. You're asking me to live a lie. I'm asking you to live a truth. The truth that we love each other. The truth that we want this baby. The truth that we're stronger together than apart. And when our child asks about their family history, we tell them they come from 2 people who loved each other so much that they overcame every obstacle the world put in their way. Catherine turned back to face him. Even incest. Even incest. They stood looking at each other across the bedroom they'd shared for 2 years. Outside, the sun finished setting, leaving them in the gathering darkness. I need time to think, Catherine said finally. How much time? I don't know. Maybe forever. Daniel nodded and headed for the door. As he reached for the handle, Catherine's voice stopped him. Daniel. Yeah. If I said yes, if I somehow found the courage to say yes, what would that look like? How would we live with this? Daniel turned back to her, hope flickering in his chest like a candle in the wind. We'd live like any other married couple expecting their first child. We'd love each other. We'd protect our family. And we'd never ever let Marcus Walsh win. Catherine was quiet for so long that Daniel thought she'd dismissed him. Then, barely audible, give me until tomorrow. Tomorrow. Tomorrow morning. I'll have an answer for you tomorrow morning. Daniel left her alone with the most important decision of both their lives. Daniel woke to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. He'd fallen asleep sitting against the bedroom door, his back aching from the uncomfortable position. Gray morning light filtered through the windows as Catherine emerged from their room carrying a small suitcase. His heart stopped. Catherine. She paused when she saw him on the floor, her green eyes unreadable. I'm going to the hospital, she said quietly. The hospital? Is something wrong with the baby? No. I'm going to find Rebecca Walsh. Daniel scrambled to his feet, confused. Rebecca is at the hospital? She works there now. She's a nurse in the maternity ward at UCLA Medical Center. I called and asked if she'd meet with us. Us. Catherine set down the suitcase and faced him fully. Her face showed the exhaustion of a sleepless night, but also something else. Resolution. Daniel, I spent all night thinking about what you said. About Marcus Walsh winning if we let this destroy us. And I realized something. You're right about one thing. Our child is innocent. Whatever happened to create them, whatever biological connection we have, this baby deserves parents who choose love over fear. Daniel's heart began beating again, cautiously hopeful. But I also realized something else, Catherine continued. I can't move forward until I understand where I came from. Until I look the woman who gave birth to me in the eye and ask her how she survived what Marcus Walsh did to her. Catherine. I need to know if it's possible to heal from this kind of trauma. I need to know if there's a way to build something beautiful from something so horrible. Daniel stepped closer. And if Rebecca tells you it's possible. Catherine's voice was barely a whisper. Then I want to try. With you. For our baby. Relief flooded through Daniel so powerfully that his knees nearly buckled. And if she tells you it's not possible? Then we'll figure out another way. Together. Catherine picked up her suitcase. Will you drive me? I don't think I should be behind the wheel right now. An hour later, they sat in the hospital cafeteria across from Rebecca Walsh. At 54, she carried herself with the quiet strength of someone who'd survived unthinkable trauma and built a meaningful life despite it. Her graying hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and she wore scrubs decorated with tiny teddy bears. Thank you for meeting with us, Catherine said. Thank you for calling. I wasn't sure you'd ever want to see me after what I told you. I need to understand something, Catherine said. How did you survive it? How did you build a life after what Marcus Walsh did to you? Rebecca was quiet for a moment, studying Catherine's face. It wasn't easy. For years I thought I was broken, damaged beyond repair. I had nightmares, panic attacks, periods where I couldn't stand to be touched by anyone. Daniel and Catherine exchanged glances. But eventually, I found a therapist who specialized in childhood trauma. She helped me understand that what happened to me wasn't my fault. That Marcus Walsh's crimes didn't define who I was or what I was capable of becoming. How long did it take? Catherine asked. Years. Decades, really. Healing isn't linear. But Catherine, you have to understand something. You and Daniel aren't responsible for Marcus Walsh's crimes. You didn't choose to be his children any more than I chose to be his victim. But we chose each other, Daniel said. After we became adults. After we fell in love. Without knowing your connection, Rebecca pointed out. You made those choices based on love, not biology. Catherine leaned forward. Rebecca, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Did you ever have other relationships? After Marcus? Rebecca smiled sadly. I married my husband Tom 22 years ago. We have 2 sons together. Tom knows everything about my past, including my relationship to you. How did you tell him? Very carefully. With the help of my therapist. And only after I'd learned to separate Marcus Walsh's crimes from my own worth as a person. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. Do you think it's possible for Daniel and me to do the same thing? Rebecca reached across the table and took Catherine's hand. Honey, I think if 2 people love each other enough to overcome what you've already overcome, they can overcome anything. But you'll need help. Professional help. And you'll need to be patient with yourselves and with each other. What about our child? Daniel asked. How do we protect them from this legacy? You protect them by being the parents Marcus Walsh never was. By creating a home filled with love instead of fear. By showing them that family isn't about DNA, it's about choice. Rebecca paused, then continued. And when they're old enough to understand, you tell them the truth. Not the ugly details, but the truth that they were born from love between 2 people who chose each other. You let them know that sometimes the most beautiful things come from the most difficult circumstances. Catherine was crying openly now. Do you really believe that? Catherine, look at me. Catherine raised her eyes. You are not a mistake. Your love with Daniel is not a mistake. Your child is not a mistake. You are all proof that goodness can come from even the darkest places. After they left the hospital, Daniel and Catherine drove to the beach at Santa Monica. They walked along the shore in comfortable silence, watching waves crash against the sand. I want to try, Catherine said suddenly. Try what? Try to build a life with you. Try to be a family. Try to prove that love really is stronger than biology. Daniel stopped walking and turned to face her. Are you sure? I'm terrified. But yes, I'm sure. What changed your mind? Catherine smiled through her tears. Rebecca. Seeing that she survived and thrived and built something beautiful from something horrible. And realizing that our baby deserves to see that kind of strength in their parents. Daniel pulled Catherine into his arms, holding her against his chest as the Pacific Ocean roared around them. "I love you," he whispered. "Whatever we are to each other, I love you." "I love you too." They stood together on the beach where they'd taken their first vacation as a married couple, choosing each other again despite everything the world had thrown at them. "Daniel." "Yeah." "Ask me again." "Ask you what?" Catherine smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her in weeks. "Ask me to marry you." Daniel dropped to one knee in the sand, taking her hands in his. "Catherine Morrison, knowing everything we know about where we came from and who we are, will you marry me? Will you choose to build a family with me? Will you choose love over fear?" "Yes." Catherine laughed through her tears. "Yes to all of it." Daniel stood and kissed her as the waves crashed around their feet. When they broke apart, Catherine placed his hand on her belly. "I felt the baby kick during that speech," she said. "Really? Really? I think our little one approves of our decision." 3 months later, February 14th, 2025, Valentine's Day. Daniel paced the hospital waiting room, his heart racing with anticipation and terror. Catherine had gone into labor at 2 a.m., and after 12 hours, their baby was finally ready to make an appearance. "Mr. Morrison." Dr. Martinez appeared in scrubs, smiling widely. "You have a healthy baby girl." Daniel's legs went weak with relief. "And Catherine." "Exhausted but perfect. She's asking for you." Daniel found Catherine in the recovery room, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in pink blankets. She looked tired but radiant, her hair damp with sweat and her face glowing with joy. "Daniel, meet our daughter." Daniel approached cautiously, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the moment. The baby was perfect. Tiny hands with miniature fingernails. A small nose that looked exactly like Catherine's. Eyes that were still deciding what color they wanted to be. "She's beautiful," he whispered. "She's ours," Catherine said simply. Daniel sat beside the bed, studying their daughter's face. "What should we name her?" Catherine smiled. "I was thinking Hope. Hope Morrison Walsh. Like we discussed." "Hope Morrison Walsh," Daniel repeated. "Perfect." As if she recognized her name, baby Hope opened her eyes and looked directly at her father. In that moment, Daniel felt something shift inside him. All the fear, all the shame, all the uncertainty about their unconventional family melted away. This was his daughter. Born from love, whatever the circumstances. "She's going to ask questions someday," Catherine said softly. "And we'll have answers. Good answers." Daniel kissed Catherine's forehead, then leaned down to touch his daughter's tiny hand. "We'll tell her that sometimes the most precious things in life come from the most unexpected places. We'll tell her that love is a choice we make every single day. And we'll tell her that she is proof that beautiful things can bloom even in the darkest soil." Catherine smiled. "I like that." "And if she asks about her grandfather, we'll tell her that some people choose to spread darkness, but that her parents chose to create light." Hope made a small sound, as if she approved of their conversation. "Mr. and Mrs. Morrison." A nurse appeared in the doorway. "You have visitors." Rebecca Walsh entered carrying a bouquet of pink roses, followed by an older man with kind eyes. "This is my husband Tom," Rebecca said. "We wanted to meet our granddaughter." Catherine's eyes filled with tears. "Granddaughter. If you'll have us as family," Rebecca said gently. "Biology isn't the only thing that creates relatives." Daniel stood and shook Tom's hand. "We'd be honored." Rebecca approached the bed and looked down at baby Hope. "She's absolutely perfect." "She is," Catherine agreed. "What did you name her?" "Hope." Rebecca smiled through her own tears. "Hope. I love it." As the afternoon sun streamed through the hospital windows, 5 adults gathered around one tiny baby, creating a family that existed not because of shared DNA, but because of shared love. Marcus Walsh had intended to destroy lives. Instead, He had inadvertently created a family stronger than anything he could have imagined. Hope Morrison Walsh opened her eyes and looked around at the faces surrounding her with love. She was 6 hours old, and she was already proof that light could triumph over darkness. That love could conquer even the most impossible circumstances. And that sometimes, the most beautiful endings come from the most unlikely beginnings.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.